We're live.
Ooh, this is the latest edition of the Profiles After Show. This is this episode is about Francis Ford Coppola. Everybody out there who watches the profiles, you know the routine. Scott and Alicia, they run down their favorite films, favorite moments, when they saw their first Coppola movie, or whoever they're profiling that week, the first movie that they saw. So this week, my panelists are Liam. Liam, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Liam. I'm regular on the show. I'm pretty excited to talk about Coppola, and yeah, let's have some fun, I guess.
And we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Steve Zissou.
What's up, everyone? I'm not going to be a normal panelist this week. I run the brackets on the profile page, and I'm just going to chime in from time to time. We're waiting on L.A. LaCouture, the admin, to come in, and once she comes in, your guys should be good on the panel.
Yeah, he's also Bill Murray. We'd just like to congratulate St. Vincent being number 5 at the box office on Friday.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, right.
All right, and myself, you may know me from commenting on Mobile and the brackets and everything under the sun. I am Dan Skip Allen, and I will be your host for this episode of the Profiles After Show. And what do we start with every week? We start with It's a Wonderful Life. And I'm just going to read a few things about Francis Ford Coppola. He was born April 17th, 1939. He went to college at Hofstra and UCLA for film school. His movies during the 70s won 2 Oscars for Best Picture for The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, and also the Palme d'Or. That is the best movie of the Cannes Film Festival. He won that twice as well for The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. His movies have been nominated for 14 Oscars, and he won 5. And he also got the Urban Thalberg Award for his movies that he did during his career. All of his work, his body of work, whether it be producing, writing, or directing. So he won the Urban Thalberg Award at the Oscars as well. So what we're going to do here is what we did last week, and this is what we're going to do this week. We're going to go down Alicia and Scott's top 5, or Fast 5 as they like to call it. And so with that in mind, we're going to go down their number 5, and their number 5 was The Outsiders. Now, I'm going to ask my panelists anything they have to say about The Outsiders, if they have it on their list. And so with that, the first person on my panel is Liam. And Liam, say anything you have if you have The Outsiders on your list.
Well, yeah, The Outsiders was it on my list because I haven't actually seen it. I'm really sorry. I do have. I've seen at least 6 or 7 of these movies. I just haven't seen The Outsiders. Sorry, people out there. I will watch it. I really do want to watch it. Sorry.
Steve, would you like to comment or say anything about The Outsiders?
No, I don't really have a lot to say about these movies, fellas, what I'm trying to tell you.
That's fine. Okay, that would leave me then. I saw The Outsiders when I was a kid. I read the book in high school, like I think Scott said that he read the book in high school, and I remember The Outsiders. It was a movie about the 60s, and the thing I remembered is like all these stars. I remembered Patrick Swayze, Tom Cruise, D.B. Sweeney, Emilio Estevez, all these great young up-and-coming actors. But yeah, it was an interesting neighborhood movie about the Sosa's and the Greasers. It takes place during the '60s, very reminiscent of, like Scott said, West Side Story. And I had that as an honorable mention on mine. I did not have that in my top five. That was an honorable mention. So now we're going to go down to number
We're going to
four.
say, sorry,
Go ahead.
isn't The Outsiders inspired by Romeo and Juliet as well?
Um, no, not that I recall, Liam. I just remember it having two rival gangs fighting over a dispute that happened. One of the people in the family or friends of the family got stabbed and killed in a park, and that sprung a war between the Greasers and the Socias. It could, I guess, I don't know. I don't recall a female being involved in the Outsiders as an argument or anything to do with that. So I don't know as far as that goes. All right, with that in mind, I'm going to go to Scott and Alicia's number 4 on their list.
We missed out First Blood. Sorry.
I'm going to go to First Blood after number 4.
All right, no problem.
Number 4 on their list is The Conversation. And I know that Liam has a lot to say about The Conversation, so I'm going to turn it over to Liam.
Yeah, it's my number 4 as well on my Fast Five. I rewatched it a couple of nights ago, and it's a bit of a slow burn. Like, it's very slow, but you get a great movie out of it. I mean, Gene Hackman, he's fantastic in it. It's really one of, well, Gene Hackman is known for being like these really tough and rough people and like badasses, but here he's just like this really paranoid and it's just like you see him go into madness. It's very Hitchcockian, like Vertigo particularly. It's like obsession over something. He's obsessed over this couple. He doesn't know what's going to happen. And then there's also a twist, like a Hitchcock-like twist at the end. Yeah, it's a great movie. I just don't want to say everything about it. It's Robert Duvall, Harrison Ford. I highly recommend watching it. You should see it.
All right, I'm just going to say that leading up to this episode of Profiles, like Scott and Alicia, I rewatched a bunch of Francis Ford Coppola movies, and a movie I had never seen was The Conversation. And just before this episode, I watched The Conversation. So I'm very fresh from watching it, and I have to agree with you 100%, Liam. You got Harrison Ford, Robert Duvall, Gene Hackman, John Cazale. John Cazale only did 5 movies, and this is one of the 5 he did. He did Godfather Part 2, The Conversation, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Deer Hunter. Those are the 5 movies that John Cazale did before he died. And the ending of this movie is so Hitchcockian. This is exactly the kind of movie that Hitchcock would have made if it's so interesting that Coppola made a movie it's so psychological. You don't know if you're thinking if Gene Hackman's in a dream or if he's in reality. Then who does he trust? Does he trust the people that he's supposed to give the tapes to, or does he trust his own instincts from being a person that this is his job? He goes and he records people for people, whether it be politicians or government officials or whoever. That's his job, and he gets paid for that, and he's very, very good at that. And he's very private. He doesn't like people coming over his house. He doesn't share his phone number. He's a very private person. But the ending of this movie is one of the most craziest endings I have ever seen in a movie. You just don't see the ending of this movie coming. And I did not have The Conversation on my top 5 because I hadn't seen it. So my top 5 was already written out before I saw The Conversation, but I thought I would just chime in there and say my thoughts on The Conversation. All right, so with that in mind, we are going to First Blood. Alicia and Scott's First Blood is Alicia's The Godfather. She saw it. I guess she got a rental at her cassette tape, VHS tape store in Australia, and that's how she saw it. And Scott saw Apocalypse Now. Now, it was his first blood for Coppola, and he said his parents took him to see it as a child. I have some questions about his parents taking him to see that movie as a little kid. Wow, that
And
is a
The
disturbing movie.
Shining and Taxi Driver as well.
Yeah, The Shining and Taxi Driver. Man, his parents were a little. I don't know if I trust Scott's parents. But he didn't seem like he got too disturbed from watching all those movies at a young age. All right, so with that, I'm going to go to Liam. And what is your first blood?
My first blood was The Godfather. God, it was a long time ago. I don't really remember much. I just remember finding it really boring as a kid. Like, oh, why are these people just talking all the time and nothing's really happening? It's really boring. Then when you get older, I think you start to appreciate it more. Like, I've seen it multiple times over the past few years, and it's one of the best films of all time. I was young. I was a little kid. I didn't really care. I just wanted to see things blow up. But now, yeah, when you get older, you start to appreciate film a lot more. So, yeah, my first blood was The Godfather Part 1.
All right. Well, that's good. I'm glad you had a chance to see The Godfather when you're young, and I'm guessing it was one of those movies that helped you become such a big movie fan today. Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it was one of them. Pulp Fiction
Okay.
was one, but yeah, Godfather definitely was an influence. Sorry.
That's fine. Okay. Now I'm gonna say my first blood was a tandem. I saw The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 back to back as a 6-year-old kid. I may have talked about this before, but it's a big influence on me. There was a TV station in Boston called TV 38 WBZ in Boston, and every Saturday they would have some kind of genre, whether it be westerns, monster movies, gangster movies, black and white movies, Christmas movies, whatever, football movies, whatever. And I was able to check out probably about 8 years after The Godfather and about 6 years after The Godfather Part 2 came out, a double feature of both of them. And when I saw those two movies together, my jaw was just dropped. I instantly knew that I wanted to be a movie buff and a movie fan, and I just wanted to find and absorb every kind of movie I could, because those movies really, really affected me in a good way, because they were just such great movies, you know. And my family life was a lot different than The Godfather, but yeah, that's it. When I was a little kid, about 6 years old, about 1980, 81, I think I watched a double feature of The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. Now, with that, our first blood has gone by. We're going to go to number 3, and number 3 on Scott and Alicia's Fast Five is Apocalypse Now. And with that, I'm going to go to Liam.
Yeah.
What do you say about Apocalypse Now?
Yeah. It's hard because to put them between The Godfather and everything. It's my number 3 as well. I got it on Blu-ray. I've seen the Redux and the original. I'd probably say it's the best war movie ever made. I know that's a big claim. I know people usually go to Saving Private Ryan or Bridge on River Kwai, but I'd probably say Apocalypse Now is my favorite war movie, Vietnam War movie. It's in my top 10 movies of all time as well. It really does capture like mentally how the Vietnam War really mentally impacted so many people. I wasn't around when that was happening, so I don't know, but from what I've seen, like Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now and Platoon and stuff like that, it wasn't very good. And the opening shot with Martin Sheen just like doing kung fu naked, and it's like really, really disturbing. And it's pretty much like The Godfather in the sense where it's like an ensemble cast. You have like Marlon Brando, Dennis Hopper, Robert Duvall, Martin Sheen, Lawrence Fishburne, like all bringing like their best to the movie. Yeah. So I love Apocalypse Now. It's one of my all-time favorite movies.
And just like Scott and Alicia and Liam, I have Apocalypse Now as my number 3 on my Fast Five. Now, and I'm gonna go off of what Liam said. I mean, it is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm a big fan of war movies, and I'm a big fan of Vietnam War movies because it was such a brutal war. We didn't know of whether we should have been in that war, and then how hard these Vietnamese people fought to survive, and we couldn't understand why aren't they giving up? Why aren't they just laying down? Because we're the almighty America, and it spawned a lot of protests and whatnot in America. But I just want to go on to the Colonel, the Captain Willard and the Colonel Kurtz thing. I mean, Captain Willard, he didn't know what he was going to do. He was waiting for that next assignment, and then this is like kind of an out there kind of assignment for him. And he gets stuck on this boat with these guys. He doesn't know who the heck these guys are. But Brando, I think, is one of his best performances of his entire career as Colonel Kurtz. He was just such a shadowy enigma of a figure. He was just so hard to understand. And it was just like he got brainwashed all of these people from Cambodia and Indochina, and North Korea, and all these different people to follow him. And Willard didn't understand why they got all these people to follow him. And it was just it's a typical kind of brainwash scenario. You know, you get the Mansons, or you get these cults over here in America. And that's what that was. It just so happened it was in the middle of one of our most brutal wars we ever fought. I absolutely love Apocalypse Now. I could go on, but we don't have all night to talk about all these movies.
Do you know what's really ironic? I've got two things to say. I've got a fact, and I found it funny how Brando didn't care, didn't want to be there. You know, he's like got overweight, didn't really prepare for the role, and it's like one of the most menacing characters didn't even care. It's just kind of ironic. But,
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Also, I've just got an interesting fact about Apocalypse Now. They're originally going to have Steve McQueen playing Martin Sheen's role in Apocalypse Now, and he was apparently because of his alcohol problems he couldn't do it. Because like a year later he died, in 1980, and they got Harvey Keitel. They actually filmed a few scenes with him, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken. But then Francis Ford Coppola was like, "Nah, we don't want this guy," so they got Martin Sheen instead. I just want to put that out. That's interesting facts.
And it's interesting because I couldn't have seen Steve McQueen or Harvey Keitel in that role now. I mean, it's such a classic role that Martin Sheen's known for in his career, next to his role as the president in The West Wing. But I just can't see anybody in that role now. You know? Okay. With that, we're going to go on to The Right Stuff. Now, The Right Stuff, Alicia and Scott's Right Stuff. Liam and I have kind of alluded to one of these already, but I'm just going to read it anyway. Scott, his right stuff is Willard meets Kurtz and hears him, but he can't see him. Wow, what a great scene! Yeah. It makes Brando just stand up a mile high when you hear Brando's voice, and he's looking around, he can't see him. And Alicia's right stuff is after the baptism in The Godfather Part 2, or The Godfather Part 1, I mean. After the baptism, Michael becomes the Godfather. Kay realizes who her husband really is. And that's how the movie ends. If you haven't seen The Godfather, I hope to not give any spoilers, but it's a 30-year-old movie, so I'm hoping
42 years.
42-year-old movie. So hopefully you out there have seen this movie. It just shows the power in the drama behind that Michael Corleone character. Okay, Liam, go ahead and tell us what your right stuff is.
Well, I don't want to. Again, mine is from The Godfather Part 2. It's at the end when it's with Robert De Niro as Don Vito, when he comes back to Italy to get revenge for his death of his mother. That scene is so great. Like, it's probably my favorite revenge scene in any movie. It just goes up to him, stabs him through the chest, and just like gets out of there. That's such a great scene. I don't speak Italian, but I actually am half Italian. So my dad told me, I can't remember what he told me what it was, but it was like it was pretty serious and pretty badass. Don Vito's part, what he said. It's a great scene. Sorry if I spoiled it for you if you haven't seen it, but yeah, that's a really great scene. Sorry if I is that all I can say.
No, you're absolutely right. That was I just rewatched it earlier today, and I loved. It was like, yes, he gets revenge. You know, you're like so happy, but you don't originally when you're watching it, you don't originally know what the whole thing is. He's offering him a can of olive oil, and he's saying, "Oh, we're going to join our businesses," and then he stabs him in the heart. You know, and so that was a great scene. Absolutely right, and a very similar scene in a different movie. I'm going to go with Willard. He finally got his mind
Yeah.
right. And he puts paint on him, and he gets in the water, and he gets all sneaky, and they're killing the
Yeah.
for a sacrifice, and he sneaks around, and what's his name's like reading words from the Bible, and he just sneaks up and kills them.
Uh-huh.
Kills them. And then he comes out and he stands there, and all the people bow down to him.
Yeah.
And when he puts his knife down, they put all their guns down. What an just crazy, crazy ending to a movie. One of the best endings of any movie I've ever seen. So that's right stuff.
And like, I'd also just like to put out a couple of honorable mentions because there's so many great scenes. Like the baptism scene with the Godfather was my number 2 because that scene is like so great because it just shows how like it's kind of ironic how he's like you're a good man and everything, and all these people are just getting killed around. All these people are just getting from the families are getting murdered. I just like to put that out there as well. It's a great scene as well.
Yeah, well, I'll just say one more. The respect that Vito Corleone had, that Luca Brasi, he's stuttering and he's trying to come out with the sentence that is, thank you, Don Vito, I respect you letting me come to your daughter's birthday or wedding and whatnot. You could just tell how powerful a man Vito Corleone was because Luca Brasi was his assassin. He was the guy he sends to kill people. We all know what happened to Luca Brasi after that, but it's still, if a guy like Luca Brasi can respect you like that, you know that Vito Corleone is a powerful man. All right, so now we're going to go on to Scott and Elise's number 2, and that is none other than The Godfather Part 2. And with that, I'm going to leave it to Liam.
Yeah, it's my number 2 as well. It's one of the best sequels ever. It's really, I don't think it's as good as 1. That's another discussion. Will just happen later. But yeah, it's an excellent movie. It's one of the best of all time. It's kind of funny. I think Alicia and Scott said this. How like it's the rise of Don Vito and the fall of Michael in the sense where he's like Don Vito comes from Italy after his mother gets killed. He starts raising the Corleone, builds his life in the crime world. Robert De Niro didn't speak a single word of English. He got an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Like, how great's that? I mean, you don't really see that very often in movies. Like, Benicio del Toro, I think, the track is one. But, and also, yeah, Al Pacino really got into that character. You know, it was a setup, the first one. And now he's really Michael Corleone. That's like his most famous role of all time. And everyone's just great in it. I mean, Robert Duvall, he's great. It's just there's so much I can say about it. I just don't want to take up a lot of time. So, Dan, I'll bring it back to you.
I'm going to go with Alicia and Scott and Liam, and I'm going to say, and it was close. I really thought that The Godfather Part 2 might have been my number 1, and then I changed it at the last minute, and The Godfather Part 2 is number 2 on my Fast 5. And, I mean, I'm going to go off of what Liam said really quick here because we already know pretty much everything. It's just, what a great origin story to follow up the story of Vito Corleone in The Godfather. We get to see Robert De Niro, and he does say 1 or 2 words in English in there. Not a lot, but he does say a couple words in English in there. And then also how Michael had to fend off all these people, including his brother Fredo and all these different people for turning on him. and the ending movie, it's just priceless. The ending of that movie was just so priceless. I mean, how all the different things came together, and it was like two movies in one. You have the origin story of Vito Corleone, and then you have to kind of like, in a lot of ways, the reemergence of Michael Corleone and the Corleone family as power brokers in that whole entire world. All right, well, the next thing we're going to talk about here is a player. Now, the player, no, the last detail. The last detail, not the player. My bad. All right, the last detail. I'm going to use some of Alicia and Scott's what they said. Stanley Kubrick says The Godfather is the greatest movie ever. Remember that. This is Stanley Kubrick saying this. The greatest movie ever. Sophia Coppola, we know that's the daughter of Francis Ford Coppola. She appeared in all three of the Godfather movies. Obviously, as his daughter in Godfather 3. You remember that.
Yeah, it wasn't good, but...
And John Cazale, which we mentioned before, he only was in 5 movies, and he met his love of his life before he had died, Meryl Streep, on The Deer Hunter, another great Vietnam movie.
Wait, I feel bad doing this. I've got to get a charger, so do you have any other... my computer's low on battery. Give me a sec. Oh, this is really bad.
I'm gonna go with the player. I'm gonna go with the player now, and we're gonna talk that the player for me are Colonel Kurtz, Michael Corleone, Vito Corleone, and Luca Brasi. Those are my nominations for the player. I just think all 4 of those characters are great characters. They epitomize the people that they played. The performances by Marlon Brando, Al Pacino.
Sorry about this.
Were phenomenal as these characters, and so that's the player. Now, do you have any last detail or any players that you want to nominate? That was all Alicia and Scott's. So now I'm going to give it to you.
Well, I know Robert Redford was considered, and Jack Nicholson were considered for the role of Michael Corleone for The Godfather. I'm pretty sure Francis Ford Coppola was really pissed off about that because he wanted an Italian to play Michael. They didn't want an American to play it, so yeah, it was a bit difficult for him. And I mean, characters. There's so many good ones. It's hard to pick. Don Vito is iconic. Colonel Lance, like what you said, he's a very menacing, one of the most creepy and most intense and terrifying villains. I can do this. So many. Michael Corleone. I mean, Sonny. Like the whole Corleone cat family. Man, it's hard. It really is. I'm sorry, Dan. It may take me a bit to think.
That's fine. All right. With that, we are down to the final. We are down to number 1 on Alicia and Scott's Fast 5. And if you've been watching the show, or when you watch the show, you'll understand that there's only one movie that could be the number 1 on Alicia and Scott's Fast 5, and that is The Godfather. And with that, I'm going to leave Liam.
Jack's number 1, right? I thought it was Jack.
Good.
Jack's not number 1? What?
No.
Oh, I came unprepared. Oh, well, yeah, that Godfather movie. I don't really care for. No, I'm just joking. It's my number 1 as well. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. Definitely top 5 for sure. And it's like they read my comment out loud on the profile show. So like it is basically an ensemble. All these unknowns at the time, except Brando, like Duval, Khan, Pacino. Like now they're big. They're like some considered legends of their time. And the way it's written, I mean, Francis Ford Coppola, and I can't remember Mario. You know the author of The Godfather's name?
Mario Puzo.
Yeah, Mario Puzo. they're such an excellent script. Just the way they both executed the movie took you places you didn't expect, and there's so many iconic scenes from that movie, and basically the evolution of Michael from just being this war hero to this one of the meanest, like, ruthless gangsters in film history. It's just such a great journey from start to finish, and it's really the origin story. That's really what The Godfather is, and it's a definite watch. You have to watch it if you haven't seen it.
And also at number one on my Fast Five is The Godfather. And I just the one line, the one sentence in this movie that made me absolutely love this movie is when Vito Corleone says, "I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse," and then you go to the movie producer's house and he's sleeping and he opens the blanket up, and what do you see in the blanket? The dead horse's bloody horse's head. That's what made this movie an absolute classic, because Francis Ford Coppola didn't pull any punches with this movie and this franchise. It was always going to be graphic. It was always going to be blood, truthful, and as authentic as he could tell a story of a mob boss and a mob boss's family. And absolutely, it's in my top five. It's right there at either one or two. All depends what day of the week it is for me, Liam, on my favorite. And you can't put The Godfather without putting The Godfather Part 2. It's like
Yeah.
it's such an epic of a just amazing. I mean, and you talk about sequels. You talk about some of the greatest sequels of all time. Aliens, Empire Strikes Back. Their argument that The Godfather Part 2 is the greatest sequel of all time and one of the top 5 or 10 greatest movies of all time. So The Godfather, you're right. You got James Caan, you got Robert Duvall, you got Al Pacino, you got Marlon Brando, you got Talia Shire, you got Diane Keaton. I mean, tell me, these are all Oscar-winning actors, most of them. And then you put that kind of powerhouse actors in a movie, and then you have one of the greatest directors of all time. Francis Ford Coppola is a fantastic. Having 4 movies out in a span of 2 years that were nominated for the Oscar and the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. You tell me any other director, or he produced these movies. He made these movies with his own money as well. There's nobody that comes close to Francis Ford Coppola and The Godfather. It's hands down one of the top 2 or 3 movies of all time. Now, with that said, a few movies that made my top Fast Five that didn't make theirs, and I'm sure Liam's got 1 or 2 on his Fast Five. We're going to call this honorable mentions. So we're going to go to Liam, and Liam, tell us any honorable mentions you have on your list that we didn't talk about.
I would say Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 1992, I'm pretty sure. Apart from Keanu Reeves, he was pretty bad in it. It's actually a decent movie. Like, a lot of people actually hate on it. Like, if you go on like Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes, it doesn't have that higher rating, but I actually kind of enjoy it. I think it's not as good as the 1931, the Bela Lugosi one, but it's a very good take on the Dracula mythos. Like, Gary Oldman, he owns that role of Dracula. He's fantastic in it, and the costume stuff, it's so menacing. It's really cool, actually. I like the costume design in the movie, and it's very well made. Like, Coppola directed really well, and Anthony Hopkins, he was pretty badass in it. He was pretty good, and it was just a good underrated, I would say, because he gets a lot of hate from a lot of people. And also, I'm sorry if I'm stealing one for you, Dan. The Godfather Part 3 is not a terrible movie. Not a bad movie. I think it's okay. Well, I'm sorry if I took yours.
That's fine. I don't think Godfather Part 3 is terrible either. I just think that the subject matter, using the church and money like that, was kind of a little out there for them to go that way. But I'm actually going to agree with you on Bram Stoker's Dracula. I am a huge Gary Oldman fan, and I think he was fantastic as Bram Stoker in this movie. And a lot of people want to talk about Tom Cruise and Interview with a Vampire. I think Bram Stoker's Dracula is up there, in my opinion, with Bela Lugosi's Dracula. It's as one of the best Dracula movies of all time. And there's a lot of artsy-fartsy stuff in this movie. But I think the performances from Winona Ryder, Anthony Hopkins, like you said, this is not a lighthearted movie. It goes back to the Apocalypse Now and The Godfather. It's bloody. It is a bloody mess of a movie. Not a mess in a bad way, a bloody mess in a good way. When you got Dracula and he's killing people, sucking the blood out of them, he's got his daughter skulking around the mansion and stuff, you know that this movie's going some crazy, crazy places. But I really liked Bram Stoker's Dracula. But I have one more that I want to talk about that I think it's up there. I think it's one of the best movies adapted from a Grisham novel, and that's Rainmaker with Matt Damon and Danny DeVito. This is one of the first, if not the first, leading role for Matt Damon, and he kills it. He absolutely kills Rainmaker, and I'm a big fan of those lawyer or procedural courtroom dramas and procedurals like that. And so when I tried to get everybody to do a global movie roundup of The Judge, it couldn't, no pun intended, couldn't get everybody round up for that one. But I'm a big fan of those kinds of movies, lawyer. And Danny DeVito was such a sleazy kind of skulky investigator character. He was really good as the investigator that helped Matt Damon and the law firm in that movie. And really quick, one more, an really underrated movie, Tucker, A Man in His Dream, about the Ford Fairlane, the car. I think it's the Ford Fairlane was the car, a Tucker and a Man in His Dream. He created a car that was huge, huge, huge at the time. I think it's Dennis Quaid or Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges, yeah, was the star. He played Tucker. Very underrated biopic of a movie, but once again about a time in our world that you don't really see a lot of, in a little small slice of life kind of storyline. A man who created a car out of nothing. He didn't have any money. You had Ford and you had Chevy and you had all these companies, and this guy Tucker creates a car. You know, he creates a car out of nothing. He gets people to back him, and I think there was only something like 300 or 400 of these made at the time. I don't know how many years they were making the Tucker cars, but that is my honorable mentions. Before we go, I'm going to ask Liam, is there anything else you would like to say about Francis Ford Coppola, his career, and any of his movies?
Well, this is about next week, Alfred Hitchcock. The brackets are up on the profiles page. I just want to say that out. Me and Alec Michael Cumbers did them. Go vote over there. I'm really excited for that one, personally, because Alfred Hitchcock's my all-time favorite director. And it was a blast working at Coppola. He's one of the best directors, and it was a fun time. I mean, what else can I say?
No, I agree with you 100%. I am so happy that Alicia and Scott are doing Alfred Hitchcock on Wednesday, and in between Wednesday, today is Saturday in America, and I'm going to be watching a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies, catching up. And I know you're doing the same, Liam, so he's one of my favorites as well. And so, with that, everybody out there in Schmoville and Profiles land, thank you for watching this episode of Profiles, Francis Ford Coppola After Show. Hopefully you watch next week. And until then, goodbye.
Bye-bye.